Hey guys, welcome to the Ramsey Paul Show. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. As always, I go over the top 5 news items of the day, and we just had some breaking news before I did the show. It has to do with Trump, Zelensky, and Putin. That they could have this threesome. No, not in that way. We'll see. They're going to get together and all negotiate. Supposedly, we will see. But thank you all for supporting the show. If you haven't, like and subscribe. I want to get to 73,000. I'm so close. I think we can do it. So let's do that. And people that financially contribute with a super sticker or send in a power chat, thank you. I really do appreciate it. But let's just get into the news. And the big news is it's just breaking. I didn't expect to see this so soon, but it looks like Trump is planning to meet with Putin in person as soon as next week, according to the New York Times. And then they're having their three-way. They're having a three-way talk with Putin and Zelensky shortly afterwards. So first of all, it's going to be one-on-one with Putin and Trump. Then they're going to bring in the little midget Zelensky in there. And that would be a great meeting. I wish I was a fly on the wall for that meeting. That'd be hilarious. I think Putin and Trump will just bully little Zelensky. And supposedly the other Europeans, no, they're not invited. So we will see if this happens. Just as a background, I think how this came about. Remember, Trump had a deadline in 2 days. Today's Wednesday, August 6th. So on August 8th, so it's Friday, he said, Putin, you gotta have a ceasefire. And if you don't do that, we're going to add more sanctions to you, which really don't make a lot of sense because we can't put any more sanctions on Russia, except for their shadow fleet. And I'll get into that in a minute, or what we call secondary sanctions. And secondary sanctions are punishing countries that still trade with Russia or buy oil and gas from Russia. And so this was Lindsey Graham's idea of bone-crushing sanctions. And already Russia said, well, we're not going to do that. We're winning the war. We're fighting this war for a reason. We want to, what we consider, liberate Donbass. We consider that our territory. The people there voted to be part of Russia. And we're not going to end the war, or what they would call the special military operation. And Zelensky's been a real hardliner too, saying, no, we're not going to quit the war until we get all of the Donbass back, plus Crimea. So it looks like it's a huge stalemate. But Trump, remember he said when he would solve this on day one, that obviously didn't happen. Now he's trying for this ceasefire. But Russia's like, why should we do a ceasefire? We're winning. And the ceasefire would just benefit Ukraine. It would allow them to regroup. It doesn't make any sense for us, right? It's like calling a timeout in a sport or boxing to allow yourself to regroup when you're losing. So Russia's been pretty adamant about that. But anyway, right before the official sanctions went in, it's supposed to go in this Friday, Steve Witkoff, Trump sent to Putin to talk to Putin personally. And it's kind of interesting if you've been following this. Trump has 2 different factions within his administration. Maybe he does this intentionally. Maybe it's a good cop and bad cop. And the good cop from the Russian point of view tends to be J.D. Vance and Steve Witkoff. They argue for, hey, let's end the war. We shouldn't be in this war with the United States. We should be friends with Russia. And so that's kind of the American first position. And then you have the bad cop, which tends to be Kellogg. And then you have the senators like Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, that group. They're kind of the bad cops. They want World War III. They want to punish Russia. They think Russia's weak, all that nonsense. So that's sort of how this is working. So Trump sent his good cop to Russia to try to broker a deal. Supposedly, they floated an idea, Trump did, of, hey, how about instead of a whole ceasefire, why don't we just do a ceasefire in the air, meaning no more air attacks, where you stop attacking Kiev and Ukraine will stop doing drone attacks on Moscow and energy sites. I don't know. I mean, they'd have to work out the details because a lot of this war, especially on the front lines, drones are involved. Would that be part of the ceasefire in the air war? Is that considered part of the air war? I don't know how Ukraine would agree to that because they're very short on men and they rely on their drones. I think Russia would be happy to agree to that because it'd just be the ground war then. And that would make it further easy, I think, for Russia to win, which, by the way, Russia's already winning. And so that's kind of the background of the negotiations. But that was one of the ideas. So it's kind of a modified ceasefire, kind of a face-saving thing. Okay, you won't do a real ceasefire. How about if we do this kind of half-assed thing where we just don't attack each other in the air? I don't know if that will be agreed to. If you remember a few months ago, there was like a 30-day ceasefire that Trump brokered between Putin and Zelensky, that for 30 days they wouldn't attack each other's energy facilities. Well, Zelensky, he violated the treaty right away within a week. So that fell apart. So I don't know what exactly they're going to discuss because they seem so far apart. I know Trump loves to think he's a good deal maker, and I'm sure he is. But international politics are a little bit different than a business deal. And even in a business deal, negotiating can be very effective, but you have to have a situation where both parties are at least somewhat interested in making a deal. Obviously, they want to get the best deal possible, and that's where you go back and forth, give and take. But if both sides really don't want a serious deal or they're too far apart, there's not much you can do. I've seen this in real life. I think I brought this up before. Sasha, when her father died, she inherited some land, some nice hunting land in Arkansas, and she's in no hurry to sell it. But she had a new neighbor up there where the land is, and they said, "Hey, can we buy the land?" And I said, "Well, we're not really interested in selling it." And they kept pestering me. I'm like, well, you can always make an offer. I mean, we'll listen to an offer, but we're not really in the mood to sell. Well, in that situation, you would assume that if you want to buy it and the seller's not really interested in selling, you got to make an offer they can't refuse, like double the value. So if they would have offered double the value, yeah, I probably would have taken them up on the deal. But instead, they came back with like half the value. And it's like, what are you talking about? This is just ridiculous. We could just get a realtor and make the money. Why? It doesn't make any sense, right? So we're too far apart. There can be no negotiation there. And I think that's the situation with Ukraine and Russia. Russia, they're very adamant, and Putin, that they want the Donbass and Crimea. They want those territories recognized. They want formal agreements from Europe that Ukraine won't be part of NATO. They want to stop military funding going into NATO, into Ukraine. They've been very specific. Putin laid this out in June 2024, really specific things that they will need for an agreement. And I don't see them budging on that because, again, they don't need to. They're winning. In fact, just if you follow the war, just today or yesterday, Pokrovsk, I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's a key defense city in the Donbass. And the Russians practically, I think, have it surrounded now. And they're starting to drop leaflets telling whatever Ukrainians are in there that they need to surrender, otherwise they'll be killed. And the Russians have done this in other places too. And this is the key holdout for the Ukrainians, and they're losing it. And despite all the propaganda about, oh, Russia's losing all these troops, it's not really the case. Ukraine's losing more. We've been fed a lot of lies by the media and propaganda, and Ukraine's running out of men, and we don't have the weapons to give them. Even if we wanted to give them the weapons, we just don't have them because we don't have the inventory. We have a lot of other commitments in the world, including our best little friends in the Middle East who are doing their little genocide, and they may want to fight with Iran again. Then we have China, and we worry about Taiwan. So we're overextended, right? In a military strategy point of view, you never want to have a two-front war. But in a sense, even though we're not officially at war, we kind of got a three-front war going on. We have Russia and that proxy war with Ukraine. Then we have Israel and Iran, and that could heat up again. And then we have the potential of China. And our military is not in great shape, and we don't have a lot of manufacturing anymore. We've outsourced that, and our stocks of ammunition and missiles are low. And to compound the problem, it's not quick. You can't make the stuff that quick, and we're not set up for that. And a lot of the key components, like the rare earth minerals that need to be refined, again, we've outsourced that all to China, who's one of the enemies. So there's a problem there. And I don't blame Trump for that, but this has been a policy of globalization for decades. This is why outsourcing everything was so dangerous for our national security. And we're seeing the reason now. So even if we had the weapons, Ukraine doesn't have enough men. They're running out of men. But we don't have the weapons, and Lindsey Graham, we can spend all the money we want. Spending dollar bills does not create weapons right away. You still physically got to manufacture it. So there's a lot of problems here. Ukraine's going to lose. So Russia, they don't have any incentive really they're in the position of someone like, oh, you want to buy it from me, but I really don't want to sell. So I got all the cars. And that's the way Russia is right now. And Zelensky, you think you want to cut a deal, but he knows that if he cuts the deal, giving the Donbass officially to Russia, that will be the end of Zelensky, especially with the nationalists in Ukraine. They will string him up. So I don't see, even if they have a meeting, I don't think it's going to have a good outcome. And I hope it is. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Trump can do some magic. But I don't see either side budging. I think Putin is just being polite and willing to meet. And Zelensky, he's dependent upon us, so he's going to tag along. But I don't see a real good outcome here, because the other things that we're trying to do are these secondary tariffs, where we're putting, just recently we added a 50% tariff on India because they buy oil from Russia, and that's pissing India off. You can't tell us what we can do with another country. And Trump threatened secondary sanctions on any country that buys oil from Russia. And the big one is China. But again, there's a problem. Are we really going to put 100% tariff on China? They can just shut off our rare earth minerals, and then our military industrial complex is pretty well shut down. So there's a big problem there. So Trump's in a hard place, with all these threats. He can't really deliver them. And I think Russia knows that, and China and India, they're still going to buy from Russia. And then there's this whole thing I brought up earlier. You hear the media talk about Putin's shadow fleet. Sounds like I just picture these secretive ships cloaked in darkness that you can't hardly see or anything like that. It's just ridiculous. There is no shadow fleet. That's what ignorant people in the media call it. All a so-called shadow fleet is, these are oil tankers that go from Russia, go to, let's say, China or India. And all it is they're not insured by London. Years ago, like in the 60s and 70s, pretty much every merchant ship was insured by London. In case your ship sinks, you want to be insured. But now a lot of other countries insure it. I think London only insures like 20%. So it doesn't really make any difference anymore. But people still think they're a shadow fleet because of that. And so there's this idea of, well, if you want to try to sink those ships, and that's a declaration of war, and we could be in World War III. And I don't know if Trump really wants to get in World War III with both Russia and China and Iran. That wouldn't be a good situation. So that's where we're standing now. I hope something can work out, but I'm very skeptical of this. Meeting's always good. There's nothing bad with that. but I think Trump is being a little bit naive on that. So that was the number one story. We'll see how that comes. That's coming to a head real quick here. Remember on Friday, Trump threatened all these sanctions. He did the sanctions against India, but he's been very strangely quiet with China, which is interesting. All right. The number two story, speaking of our military and how really dysfunctional it is with DEI, and they haven't got the best people really. And we had another mass shooting at one of these military bases, Fort Stewart in Georgia, I believe this is. 5 soldiers were shot, and the suspect is a Sergeant Cornelius Radford. There you go. And here he is. There you go. Yeah, he just decided to go out and shoot his fellow soldiers. The military's got a lot of problems. We do not want to get into World War III with the current military. It's not exactly the cream of the crop. So that's the number two story. A soldier went crazy, started to shoot a lot of others. All right, the number three story, and this had to do with a guy that was on the Doge staff, and he was known as Big Balls. He was a white kid, really smart. It was kind of funny. I think that was his password or his nickname. And he got mugged on the streets of District of Columbia, D.C. Washington, D.C. can be very dangerous in places because of certain diversity. And Trump got really upset about this, and he's threatening to federalize D.C. because they can't control their own city because it's made up of the usual suspects that allow criminals to run free. And so Trump wants to crack down on that, which I support. We it's the capital. You don't have this in Moscow. We should not have this in our capital of gangs roaming and attacking people. I don't think this guy was attacked because he was a Doge staffer. The people that attack him, they probably don't know what Doge is. They probably don't know how many states are in the union. They're pretty much like animals, but they need to be put under better control. And the current administration in Washington, D.C. won't or can't do it. So the federal government should take charge of Washington, D.C. I 100% support that. All right. The other big news is in Texas. They're talking about the Republicans of gerrymandering the state, which it would give the Republicans some more House seats in the Congress. And this is something that the Democrats have always done. If you don't know what gerrymandering is, it's just dividing up your districts in your state so you maximize districts that go to whatever party you want. And that's decided by the state house. So let's say if you're in California and there's a bunch of Democrats, they will divide the districts like, okay, we'll know this district is for sure going to Republicans, but we want to draw the districts in weird way so we maximize the amount of Democrat congressmen or women or whatever that go. And it's a common practice, but now the Republicans are starting to do that. And it's got the Democrats shouting that it's not fair, even though this is what they've been doing for quite a while. And here's kind of a good summary of this, just real brief. I think I'm going to cut this out on the YouTube part because what I was doing on my Substack, I'll show the original. But on YouTube, I was showing a TikTok video. The guy was talking, but unfortunately, he had music on the background, and YouTube gets kind of sensitive about that. But what he was basically talking about how the Democrats have already gerrymandered pretty much all their states, so they can't really fight back in their states. They've always done this practice, whereas Republicans always try to play more fair. But now the Republicans are starting to do this in Texas and in Indiana, potentially Ohio, and this could theoretically give the Republicans a huge advantage in the election. So we'll keep an eye on that, but it should be interesting. All right. So the number 5 story. This is just kind of funny. It's not a huge story, but I've seen this a lot, and it's so cringe. It's banned books. This is some bookstore, and they have like Catcher in the Rye and all this type of stuff. And what's always amazing is none of these books are banned. That's what's so amazing. If you want banned books, you'd have like the Turner Diaries or books like that. And so this is leftists. They like to have this image that they're the underdogs, and it's always the right wing that bans books, and they always show like the Nazis burning books. What they fail to say is what books were the Nazis burning? They were burning like some really perverted transgender shit back then. They weren't just burning regular books. But they like this image as the evil fascist Republicans that are banning books. And because years ago, maybe some public library, they didn't want the book Catcher in the Rye in it. I don't even understand this, because a book like Catcher in the Rye, oh, bad book. You can be a hero and check this book out or buy it at Barnes and Noble. Woo! I'm like, yeah, I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, that's like assigned in every school. It's a shitty book, and so kids have to read it. You can get it anywhere. It's not banned. So, I mean, but you want a banned book? I always like to go to these places and say, hey, you want a banned book? Well, why don't you put like the Turner Diaries? That would be interesting. That'd be impressive. But see, so it's all fake. The left, they like to pretend they're these edgy people and, oh, we're against these banned books. So what are we going to do? I'm going to buy Catcher in the Rye, you fascist. What are you going to do? You're going to try to stop me? I'm just like, come on. So it's their way of LARPing, like they're still the underground or something like that. It's so still silly. Now I have like real banned books that get you arrested in Europe. That's where you know you're dealing with a banned book. But liberals, they like to pretend they're little books that you get everywhere that's like required reading is somehow a banned book. It's just ridiculous. So anyway, guys, thank you for being here. And again, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.